A society that wants to function stably must maintain a vast lower class. But why? This is not a moral issue. Rather, for a society to operate, it needs a crowd to continuously create goods, meaning there must be a motivation for society to function. It needs a crowd that dedicates its time, its life, and its very self to work. A crowd that continuously produces and consumes the exact products they create. The necessary condition is that they must be kept motivated to own assets, yet those assets must remain forever out of reach. They might have a life that is better than previous generations, more comfortable than their parents, with the ability to travel, eat out, and have fun, yet it becomes increasingly difficult to actually own property. Therefore, they have to work harder to achieve their life goals, and as a result, society will continuously develop and operate. Welcome back to The Quiet Mind, a place where the mind is still. As usual, turn off noisy devices, find a quiet space, put on your headphones, and enjoy. Information, money, freedom, time, emotions, and thinking. And most importantly, a crowd that is always busy with survival needs, so they have no time to question the system. The system may need too many rich people, yet it also cannot allow people to be completely pauperized. Pauperization leads to uprisings and overthrows. Therefore, society needs to be stratified into middle class and lower class. And these layers must have a life comfortable enough not to be pauperized. Societies like China, Japan, or South Korea today are seeing the emergence of stories about the lying flat generation. Those who do nothing because even if they work their whole lives, they still cannot afford a home. South Korea has begun to have cinematic products like Squid Game or Parasite. Those are the signs and seeds of pauperization. However, I believe China will handle this issue better because, after all, socialist ideology is more superior than capitalism in its ability to balance social interests compared to capitalism. It's just that the final destination of socialism is something that no country or society has yet reached. The cleverness here is that the poor will not feel like they are tools being maintained in the lower class, provided they are not pauperized. Social media entertainment and a few trips a year will help them temporarily forget their suffering, enough so they don't reconsider the whole system. Society always needs poor people because only then can it create a pyramid of power. Let's look back at history. Feudal aristocrats controlled the land and then leased it to farmers to exploit agricultural products. Industrial capitalists owned the machinery and factories and then hired labor. Current financial capitalists own the cash flow, the data, the legal networks, and technology, controlling all other classes. Regardless of the era or social model, the bottom layer will always be crowded, easily replaceable, and without the ability to bargain. Why? Because the system is pre-programmed to keep a mass of people from understanding its design. And why must it be done this way? Because this society was not born for fairness. It was born to control instability, and therefore the crowd will simultaneously be the force that maintains society in its weak point if it cannot be controlled. In ancient times, they used violence to suppress rebels, but now it's different. They have created a continuous chain of crowd behavior control that almost all social models must use to maintain order. To control humans, a species with supreme intelligence, you cannot use a whip. You must use a framework of rewards and punishments in definitions of right and wrong, success and failure, incompetence and talent. Collectively, all these definitions can be called the rules of the game, or social standards, a place where everything humans do is assigned a score. And the crowd doesn't need to know who wrote the laws. They only need to know that doing thing A makes them loved, thing B is a failure, thing C is a punishment, and thing D gets them in the papers with money and a partner. In other words, you just need to attach a reward and then propagate it to the crowd, and every individual will automatically do exactly what the system wants. A digitalized world creates a playground in which the crowd is programmed to react to lists of rewards and punishments attached and applied on a societal scale, bringing public thinking into a standard framework through social evaluation criteria. For example, success means you must earn a certain amount of money per month. Men must have a house and a car. Wanting to get married requires assets. And then there is consumerism. You must spend everything you earn, You must know how to enjoy life. You only live once and youth never returns. And so the crowd will spend everything they have, and they will no longer have a basis to rise, yet they still maintain enough motivation to work. Definitions of success and failure are injected through entertainment, pop culture, game shows, and TV dramas. None of these are purely for fun. They teach us how to think, how to love, how to live, how to spend money, and how to compete, without the crowd even realizing that the whole society has been brainwashed by dreams of high speed, by getting rich quick, by loving fast and living hurried. Then, when they fail, they don't know if it's because the game is wrong or because they aren't good enough. Modern entertainment is a sedative for awareness. The goal is to ensure the crowd never thinks they are being controlled. When the programming is successful, meaning right and wrong, success and failure are defined on a societal scale through media, entertainment, and pop culture. The system only needs to sow the standards into the crowd's heads, and the crowd itself will become the protector of those standards. They will compare themselves and simultaneously attack others to show they are still within the standards. The crowd will automatically generate a moral police force, ideological monitors, and online judgment councils, creating an automatic scoring mechanism with likes, emotional reactions, shares, hearts, anger, and follows used to measure human value. KPIs, scores, and salary bonuses used to measure employee value. All of this is a psychological digitalization game. Whoever doesn't participate becomes invisible, and so they compete with each other. They compete to spend, compete to enjoy, compete to work, compete to toil and earn money. All of this makes the majority believe they are free, while in reality, they are living in a state of unconditioned reflex, programmed in advance. Ideological slavery is slavery without the need for chains, because the real chains are already inside the head. You are not as free as you think. You only get to choose the chain you like. The most effective prison is when the prisoners monitor each other. And if anyone breaks the rules, the whole cell will vent their anger on them without the jailer ever having to appear. The crowd has become the system's immune system, and whoever resists will be isolated, while whoever is obedient will be rewarded, featured on air, promoted, and have a better life. In conclusion, social laws, morals, values, and frameworks are not entirely bad. They are tools to shape a community, keeping it from collapsing from within and being swallowed from the outside. However, this is the crucial point. When you can no longer distinguish between the framework meant for existence and the framework meant for manipulation, society will transform itself into a flock of sheep, left to be manipulated while thinking that it is freedom. Today's era is an era of playing smart, not playing obediently anymore. Capitalism and consumerism don't advise people on what to buy. They paint a destination of success, paint an image, and let society itself tell each other what to do and how to spend. Media no longer gives orders, but teaches people how to live and how to compete. And that society, which seems free, happy, and civilized, is actually a perfect cover for a new manipulation system. No touching needed, just steering. The boundary does not lie in the law, but in awareness, knowing what game you are playing, knowing who wrote the laws, knowing if the reward is real or just a colorful painted pie. If you don't know the boundary, the better you live, the more you are used as a tool for others. And that is the reason why society cannot be without the lower class. Not out of cruelty, but because society needs it. It needs a crowd always at the bottom to support the power pyramid above. It needs them to work, to consume, to dream, and then be disappointed, and to keep repeating that cycle. It needs society to live in the illusion that it can choose freely, while in reality, it is only playing a game whose rules have been pre-written. The danger lies not in poverty, but in not knowing you are being starved. Starvation is not of the stomach, but of the mind. Poverty is not of money, but of the capacity to ask questions. Thus, society will let them choose everything except two things: time to think and the perspective to see the system. Once the crowd accepts that being in the lower class is an individual's fault or due to one's own lack of ability, the system will be safe forever. The poor will not rebel. They will only be angry with each other. They won't ask who wrote the laws or who is manipulating them. They will only ask why they aren't as good as others yet. And that is when the poor become the most sustainable resource of society. No chains are needed, just a goal for them to chase. And in this game, the more obedient you are, the easier you are to use. The more talented you are, the more thoroughly you are exploited. So don't ask how to escape poverty. Ask who is defining poverty and whose game you are playing. Because if the rules aren't written by you, no matter how well you run, you are just a pawn running in the direction someone else wants. Awakening is not rebellion, but knowing the map clearly, understanding the mechanism, and choosing the right way to play. Perhaps what I am saying in today's podcast episode is a bit hard to accept, but it is the truth, and its validity depends on each person's perception and social experience. Why do you work hard but still cannot be rich? To conclude, this world doesn't need too many wealthy people, because if everyone had $10 million, no one would clean and no one would collect trash. To maintain a stably functioning society, it must be ensured that most people will never reach their financial goals. You might have a better life than your parents, but you will forever be unable to reach the life of the highest class, and you might even forever be unable to own certain types of assets. For example, luxury apartments, expensive cars, designer bags, or luxury watches. And strangely enough, this very thing urges you to continue working. Think about a normal person's life. A child graduates from university at age 22 and retires at 60. During 38 years of work, that person will have only about 14,000 working days. Subtracting weekends, holidays, time for love, entertainment, raising children, and illness, the actual time that person spends earning money will only be around 10,000 days. And if that person is at the bottom of society with an income of about $20 a day, the total lifetime assets they can earn is about $200,000. If they are an office worker with a decent income of about $50 a day, the maximum assets they can reach is about $500,000. However, this money is not net assets. It must include daily living expenses like food, housing, clothing, or travel. If they spend a lot, they might even end up empty-handed. Not to mention inflation will always be faster than the salary of most people in society. If they are frugal, the money saved for a lifetime might only be enough for a down payment on a small house. All of this is pre-designed by society for you. It's hard for you to escape that cage. Many people ask, so how to escape this vortex? The answer lies in your position. In a flawed social ecosystem, no matter how hard you work, if you only rely on manual labor or even intellectual labor, you cannot escape the limits of time and strength. In today's society, manual laborers like farmers, workers, or delivery drivers must rely on time and strength to make a living. However, time is limited and strength decreases with age. When they no longer have enough strength to work, their income stops, and sometimes a single illness can send them back to the starting line. To escape this trap, they have to extend their working hours from 8 to 10 or even 12 hours a day. But working a lot doesn't mean it will make you rich. It only helps you have enough to eat and eat more. And these workers usually place expectations on their children. They advise them to study hard to have a more stable job, not to struggle like them. But even when their children get into prestigious universities and get good jobs as doctors, lawyers, or teachers, will they become richer? The answer is no. They only transition from manual labor to intellectual labor, from using shovels to using scalpels. Yet they still rely on time and strength to earn money. And remember, time has a limit. The problem lies not in individual effort, but in the structure. You are in the wrong position in society's value distribution ecosystem. Imagine society as a financial river where value is distributed according to tiers. At the bottom are the sellers of effort, strangled by time, she, and disease. At the top are those who don't need to do anything, and money still flows to them. They don't sell effort, they sell products, services, brands, or systems. And that is the reason why, for the same cup of coffee you brew and sell for $2, it's called small scale, but franchise brand chains can sell it for $5 to $10 and make 10 times the profit. They don't just sell coffee, they sell an experience, a system, a process, and they sell thousands of cups at once without having to be there. The only way for you to escape the vortex of poverty is not to do more, but to do differently. You need to transition from selling time one-to-one to selling value one-to-many. That is, you need to find a way to sell something to many people at once without being limited by time or strength. It could be a product, a service, a digital platform, a YouTube channel, an online course, or simply a business model that can operate even while you are sleeping. It sounds big, but let's start with the simplest example, like selling water. For example, if you can make $1 on each bottle of water, to have $10,000, you need to sell 10,000 bottles. One person alone cannot do that, right? But if you can build a distribution system, agencies, or sell through e-commerce platforms, you can absolutely achieve that. Strength lies in scale, not in muscle power or degrees. From here, you will realize a simple principle that has been very carefully hidden in the traditional system. Hard work is necessary, but not enough. You need to work smart and clearly understand how society's value distribution system operates. Why? Because this society was not designed for you to become wealthy. It was designed for you to live stably. A sufficient salary, a fitting life, a bank loan, basic health insurance, a pension in old age, all those things make you believe you are being taken care of. But in reality, you are being locked in a cycle that is just enough to exist, but not enough to rise. And the scariest thing is that this stability makes you lose the motivation to break through. It makes you fear risk, fear change, fear doing things differently, and you continue to live in the safe zone. Then you teach your children to live exactly like that. And so poverty, even at a decent level, continues to be inherited. So what is the solution? It is to change your perspective. You must stop thinking of yourself as just an employee working to make a living and start thinking like a person who creates scalable value. That is when you start learning sales, learning entrepreneurship, learning how to build a personal brand, and learning about finance and investment. You don't need to quit your current job immediately, but you must lay the foundation for a different income system, an income not limited by time and strength. Try asking yourself, can you create a digital product? Can you open a channel to share knowledge? Can you sell food online? Can you build a system of collaborators? Can you invest in something to create cash flow? If the answer is yes, then start now. What are you waiting for, even if it's small? Because the path you are currently on will not lead to freedom. And if you think that is only for the talented, the wealthy, or the smart, then you have fallen into the trap. It's not that only talented people can do it. It's that those who dare to start become talented. This society has changed. You no longer need permission to start something anymore. You only need the internet, a phone, and a correct mindset. The biggest barrier doesn't lie in degrees, capital, or your starting point. It lies in how you look back at yourself. You can continue selling effort, or you can start selling value. You can continue trading time for money, or you can build a whole system so that money comes even when you are sleeping. The choice is yours, but remember that time will wait for no one. If you have listened to this point, it means today's podcast episode of mine has been useful to you. Thank you for listening this far. If you liked it, please subscribe and give me a like to continue following upcoming videos. Goodbye and see you again.